We'll begin with breaking news in New York City, where a grand jury has declined to indict an officer in the death of Eric Garner. Garner died in July from a police chokehold after a heated altercation with police after he was reportedly found illegally selling tobacco. That video soon went viral, particularly because of Garner's last words to the police when he died, which were, "I can't breathe." Take a look.
And within all that time, the guy was still around his neck.
Put your hand behind your back. I can't breathe. 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 I can't breathe.
The death of Garner incited tensions between the NYPD and minority communities at the time, and now that tension is expected to resurface after last week's riots in Ferguson and across the country over a grand jury decision that did not indict Officer Darren Wilson. The mayor of New York, Bill de Blasio, weighed in on the decision earlier this evening, and he made an appeal to residents to protest peacefully. Take a listen.
People will express themselves now as they should in a democracy. I ask everyone to listen to what Ben Garner said and what Eric Garner's son said as well. If you really want to dignify the life of Eric Garner, you will do so through peaceful protest. You will work relentlessly for change. You will not sully his name with violence or vandalism. That doesn't bring us closer to a better community.
Now joining me with the very latest from New York is RT's Alexei Yaroshevsky. Alexei, it seems a number of people have gathered there on the streets in Manhattan. What have you seen?
Well, Amira, this is just a part of the protesters. We've seen many more just literally an hour ago. There were literally several hundred people here at this particular spot next to the Rockefeller Center, and there were occasional scuffles with the police, and there were some tensions here. I would say it wasn't particularly very violent, and it was not particularly very tense here, but at some points, yeah, indeed it was quite bad. Now, the protesters, we understand, they pretty much dispersed into several areas across New York City. One is at Union Square, the other one is Times Square, but it's really hard to say where this is going to go from here because it is really hard to predict. Like last week when we saw thousands hit the streets, people are clearly enraged by what happened with the grand jury decision over Eric Garner, and this is pretty much their vocal message right now. Hands up, don't shoot, and I cannot breathe, symbolizing the two cases, the Mike Brown case and the Eric Garner case.
And at a press conference earlier today, I mentioned that the mayor made a plea for residents to remain peaceful while, of course, expressing themselves. Does that seem to be the case? Are the protesters, by and large, peaceful?
Yes, I would say so. They are very peaceful. I have never seen anything like what I saw last week in Ferguson. So can be said about the police. There's been no real violence here, but again, we don't know where it's going to go from here.
All right, RT correspondent Alexei Yaroshevsky, thanks for that reporting. New York is not the only city seeing protests tonight in the wake of the grand jury's decision in the Eric Garner case. Another rally and march is taking place here in Washington, D.C. tonight near the White House. People demanding justice. RT's Manuel Rapolo has more.
Protesters have gathered in Washington following a no indictment decision by a grand jury in the death of Eric Garner, an unarmed African-American man who was killed by a white NYPD officer in July. Garner's death is one of many killings of unarmed black males that have happened here in the U.S. Since July, spinning unrest all across the country over the issue of police abuse as well as racial disparities.
When you look at Eric Garner, you have the video of what has taken place, how he was actually screaming for help. I can't breathe. It's on video. And to hear today that the officer who had an illegal chokehold is going to be free.
The movement right now is that Black Lives Matter. And we're trying to impress it upon as many people as possible. It's not just police brutality. It's not just private violence against black folks. It's all lives. All black lives matter.
Now, despite the decision by grand juries, both in the case of Michael Brown and Eric Garner, federal investigations are underway. But if the rally that we are at this evening is any indication, the larger movement sparked by the deaths of these men is only growing in momentum across U.S. cities. Manuel Rapalo, RT, Washington.